If you're hearing this, it means I survived long enough to tell it. They say there are parts of the Smoky Mountains where maps don't help, places where the trails fade, compasses spin, and the woods decide whether you come back out. I didn't believe any of that when I went in. Not really. I was just a guy with a rucksack and an urn of my dad's ashes, looking for a quiet place to say goodbye. But the valley I picked wasn't quiet. It was watching me, and it was empty. I arrived at a town called Elkmere, Tennessee. If you try to Google it, good luck. It's a place with one gas station, a hardware store that sells more bear traps than nails, and a diner where everyone stops talking when the door opens. I asked the old man behind the counter for directions to Gear Hollow, a small, tree-choked valley I'd found in one of my dad's old trail journals. He wrote about camping there alone back in the 80s, said it was peaceful, untouched. When I mentioned it, the old man's smile dropped. "Ain't been folks down that way in a long time," he said. "Storm washed out the fire road years ago. Don't go that far anymore." I asked if the trail was still hikeable. He just looked at me and said, "If the woods don't want you, son, you'll know." I should have turned around right then. The hike started fine. Sun filtered through tall pines, bugs droned lazily, and for the first few miles I felt completely alone. No cell signal, no noise, just the quiet rhythm of boots on dirt and the rustle of the trees. Around mile 5, I passed an old ranger sign half swallowed by vines. It read, "Greer Hollow, 1.3 miles, and below that, someone had scratched, 'We hunt after dark.' I thought it was a joke. Teenagers maybe? The trail narrowed, the trees closed in, and the deeper I went, the stranger things became. I found rabbit carcasses hanging from branches, gutted, tied up with fishing line. I found a pile of rocks stacked in a circle around a child's shoe. And I found a tree with dozens of tiny handprints smeared in something browny red. Every part of me said to turn around, but I was almost there, and I needed to finish what I started. I reached the clearing where I planned to scatter my dad's ashes just as the sun dipped behind the ridge. It was smaller than I imagined, a narrow basin surrounded by steep hills, thick with trees that leaned too far in. I unpacked the urn and I set up a small fire, ate from a can of beans I didn't taste. And that's when I saw it. Just 20 feet from my fire, a length of wire stretched low across the dirt, glinting, tensioned. I followed it with my eyes and saw the mechanism, a spring-loaded snare trap rigged to yank something 10 feet into the trees. I hadn't set it, and it was new. I scanned the woods, my fire crackled, something shuffled behind the tree line. I stood up slowly, and a voice, low, male, and wrong, called from the darkness. "Camping out here, huh?" I didn't answer, I didn't move. Then something whistled, high, sharp, deliberate, from the opposite direction, and another voice whispered, "He's alone." I ran. Branches clawed at my arms. My breath came in ragged bursts. I didn't know where I was going, just away from the fire, away from the voices, and deeper into the hollow. Behind me, I heard crashing, laughter, another whistle, footsteps running, but barefoot, slapping against wet earth, and then a scream, human, male, cut short. I turned around the bend in the path and I nearly fell into a pit, a deep trench dug by hand, filled with sharpened sticks. At the bottom, something moved, twitched. It was the guy chasing me, or had been. I didn't stop, and just before dawn, I found shelter, or I thought I did. An old hunting cabin, half collapsed and covered in moss. I pried the door open and slipped inside. The air was damp and sour, and inside, were dozens of backpacks, shoes, jackets, phones with cracked screens, and bones. Skulls arranged on a shelf like trophies, jawbones nailed to the wall, a crude map scratched into the wood floor covered in X marks. My clearing had one too. I backed out slowly, but a voice behind me said, "You weren't invited." I turned. He was huge, covered in mud, wearing what looked like a stitched together coat of denim and skin. His face was smeared with black ash, teeth filed to points, and he held a rusted axe like it was a part of him. I bolted. He chased me, laughing. I don't remember how long I ran, just trees, pain and heat in my chest. Then, suddenly, headlights. I collapsed onto a forest road in front of a park ranger's truck. He hit the brakes, jumped out, and I babbled every word I could manage. Cabin, traps, voices, hunting, bones. He nodded, calm, too calm. "You've had a rough night," he said. "We get people like you sometimes." He offered me water, said I must have eaten something bad, said maybe I hallucinated, said there weren't any cabins out here, no Gear Hollow trail, no missing hikers, and then he reached for the radio on his belt and whistled. If you're hearing this, it means I survived long enough to tell it. I don't know how I got out. I woke up in a hospital 2 days later. They told me I'd been found near the highway, dehydrated, in shock, no injuries, no record of being in the park system, no signs of the cabin. But the boots I'd been wearing, they weren't mine. They were made from stitched leather, human leather. And my name, it's not in the ranger's report, but the man they wrote about, the one they said was found wandering the highway, his name was already on the missing persons list, dated 1997. If you're hearing this, it means I survived long enough to tell it. The first time I heard the whistle, I was 8. My brother Jason was 10. We were camping in Olympic National Park with our mum, pitching a tent not far from Lake Crescent, a place with still water and dense fog that never seemed to burn off even by midday. Jason and I shared a tent, and on the second night, sometime around 3 AM, I woke to hear him sitting up, listening. Then he whispered, "Did you hear that?" I didn't, not at first, but then it came, a long, descending whistle from the woods. Too far to be close, too weird to be a bird. It was sad, like someone calling for help in a language only animals understand. Jason said, "That's the whistler. Grandpa told me." I didn't know what that meant, and an hour later, he was gone. I woke up to an empty sleeping bag beside me and the tent flap hanging open. No sign of Jason. Mum called the rangers. Search teams combed the trails. They found nothing. No footprints, no scent, not even a broken branch. It was like he dissolved into the fog. I told them about the whistle, and one of the rangers froze. His face changed, subtly, like I said something you're not supposed to say out loud. Then he leaned in and muttered, "You sure it was descending?" That was the only time anyone ever acknowledged it. Jason was never found. He was declared dead 2 years later. My family never camped again. 20 years later, I never really moved on. How could I? I read every article, every Reddit thread, every hiker forum. Missing 411, vanishings, cryptids, folklore, and one pattern kept repeating. People in the Pacific Northwest hearing a descending whistle in the night, then disappearing without a trace. I didn't tell anyone when I went back. I just packed a bag and drove. Olympic National Park hadn't changed much. Still quiet, still misty, still watching. I brought a small tent and a digital voice recorder. I wasn't there to hike, I was there to listen. I set up camp near where we pitched our tent 20 years ago. It was different now, overgrown, the trail partly washed out. The air was thick with cedar and damp rot. I stayed awake until well past midnight. Nothing. Then, around 3:17 AM, just like back then, it came again. That whistle, long, slow, descending, like it was spiraling into the earth. I turned on the recorder and stepped outside. I shone my flashlight into the trees. The beam hit nothing but fog and pine trunks, but the sound? It was closer than it had been 20 years ago. Too close. Then I heard movement. Not branches breaking, not animals rustling. Footsteps. Human. Deliberate. Pacing between the trees just beyond the beam of light. And then I saw him. Jason. Or something that looked like him. He looked aged. Older than he should be, even with the 20 years. Skin greyed, hair patchy, clothes ragged, but still the same Nirvana hoodie he wore when he vanished. He stepped forward, just into the edge of the light, and smiled. His eyes were wrong, too wide, too glassy. There was no recognition in them, just patience. He opened his mouth and whistled. Not the same whistle I heard before. This was new. Faster, ascending, and the trees answered. From all directions, dozens of whistles rising like insects in chorus. Jason cocked his head, then said in a dry, crackling voice, "You came back." I asked him who he was, where he'd been, what had happened. He didn't answer. He just stared at me and smiled until I blinked and he was gone. I didn't sleep. I just walked, blind through the fog, guided by the whistles. They moved with me, always just ahead, always pulling. Eventually I found something I'd never seen marked on any map. A hill, low, round and smooth, unnatural in the way it rose from the forest floor, and on its side, a hole. Not a cave mouth, a tunnel, carved smooth, pitched at a perfect downward angle. And from inside, whistles, voices, and crying. I stepped inside. The tunnel was too smooth, the walls too warm. It was like walking into the throat of something massive. After what felt like hours, I came to a chamber, circular, lined with hundreds of shoes. Children's mostly, some adult, every one of them placed carefully on the ground. And in the centre of the chamber, tree, growing through the stone, leafless, with faces carved in every branch. Some I recognised. Jason, a woman from a missing persons poster I'd seen, and one more, mine, freshly carved. I don't remember getting out. I woke up in my car, back at the edge of the park, recorder still running, 12 hours of static and whistles, and one clear voice recorded at 3:38 AM. Jason's voice. "You came back, now we can trade." If you're hearing this, it means I survived long enough to tell it. But I hadn't been the same since. Mirrors twitch, dogs growl at me for no reason, and sometimes, when I sleep, I wake up covered in pine needles and soil. There's a whistle I can't get out of my head, long, slow, descending, and when I hear it, I smile. If you're hearing this, it means I survived long enough to tell it. I worked as a seasonal park ranger in Yosemite for 4 years, mostly summer shifts, sometimes in the fall. I was stationed near Tuolumne Meadows, a place known for its alpine beauty, granite domes, and long, winding trails that vanish into miles of untouched forest. It was the kind of place that silences you, makes you feel small in the right way, until it makes you feel small in the wrong way. This happened in my final season. I never went back after this, and I never will. It started with a pattern. 3 separate hikers reported seeing the same thing, and they didn't know each other. All described an old cabin about 5 miles off the main trail. No signs of life, no ranger tags, no obvious path leading to it. They described the same warped, black wood, the same half-buried chimney, the same symbol carved into the door, a circle with something like a maze or a spiral inside it. Here's the thing, there aren't any cabins in that area, none we're aware of anyway, and certainly nothing matching that description. We logged the reports and sent them up the chain. The higher-ups shrugged, said maybe someone built an illegal structure, or maybe the hikers were just mistaken. Then a man went missing. Name was Garrett Weaver, 32, a trail runner, fit, smart, not reckless. He left a note in his car that said, "Going for a sunrise jog, back by noon." He never came back. No signs of struggle, no prints past a certain point, no calls, texts or distress beacon, just gone. Search and rescue found his footprints heading off trail towards the area where the cabin had been seen, then nothing, just dirt, like the ground itself wiped him away. And that's when I got obsessed. On my next shift, I left camp early and hiked into that region alone. I told no one. I took a GPS, extra batteries, and a body cam clipped to my vest. The air changed about 5 miles in. You learn to read the forest as a ranger. When something's hunting, when weather's about to shift, when a place feels wrong. This felt like static in the bones. The trees were too still, the bird song stopped, and then I saw it. A blackened cabin nestled between boulders, leaning to one side. No trail, no chimney smoke, no signs of age, but no signs of life either. Just wrongness, like it had always been there or never had. The door had that spiral symbol carved into it, deep, like it had been scratched by something with claws. I don't remember opening the door, I just remember being inside. It was bigger on the inside. I know how that sounds, but it's the only way I can describe it. From the outside, it was maybe 15 by 15 feet, and inside, it was a full 2-story house. Wooden floors warped like waves, always that didn't make sense. Windows that looked on skies that weren't ours. Blood red clouds, swirling lights, constellations I've never seen. And the photos, they were everywhere. Polaroids nailed to the walls, hundreds. Some black and white, some colour, all showing people mid-scream. Some of them were wearing modern hiking gear, some looked like they were from the 1950s, and one of them looked like Garrett, and one of them looked like me. I stumbled backwards and I found myself in a stairwell I hadn't seen before, descending, spiralling like it went on forever. I heard breathing, but not from one thing, from many, in perfect sync, like a hive. I ran, but no matter how far I went up or down, I always ended up back in the same hallway. Eventually I found a room I hadn't seen before, windowless, lit by flickering lanterns, and on the walls were names, hundreds, maybe thousands, carved into the wood. Some were old, some were still bleeding, like they'd been carved that day. My name was on it, but not just once, 5 times. Same handwriting, same letters, each one carved deeper. The door behind me opened, not creaked, opened. I didn't wait to see who or what was behind it. I threw myself out through a window, I landed hard, and I ran until my lungs screamed. The cabin was gone. I looked back once, just trees, no building, no path, no symbols, just normal forest, like nothing had been there. When I got back to Ranger HQ, I didn't say anything. I reviewed my body cam footage, all normal, until the cabin. Then it just cut out. 15 minutes of static, then a shot of me sleeping in my tent from an angle above my head. A shot I didn't record. I tried to report what happened, was told to take a leave of absence. My supervisor said, "You've been under a lot of stress, maybe you imagined it." But a week later, a new hiker went missing. Same area, same story, gone without a trace. And when I looked at the missing poster, I saw something faint. Behind the photo, barely visible, burned into the paper like a watermark. A spiral. If you're hearing this, it means I survived long enough to tell it. But I don't think the cabin ever let me go. I still dream about it, still hear the synchronized breathing in my walls. And last week, I found a Polaroid in my mailbox of me, standing in the forest, mouth open, eyes wide, screaming.